Can you hear me now? Please, can you hear me now? I think you should be able to, but thanks for letting me know and thank God it was only 30 seconds into the stream or 2 minutes into the stream. Because I could have been talking for an hour if nobody watched and I would never have known. Let's hope you respond and tell me you can actually hear me now. I didn't reply. 5 times 5, is that a yes? Is that some Gen Z way of saying yes that I'm unfamiliar with? I'm hoping so. Okay, so yes, I'm having a good day. Thank you very much, O. Yeah, so all I'd said really to start with is just that my computer is even more of a piece of shit than normal, so I'm not necessarily confident that this is going to be. Thank you, glad you can hear me. Yeah, I'm not necessarily confident that the stream is going to last, but I'm going to give it a go and see what happens. And also because I haven't got much to say because obviously not much has happened since my last stream, and we've got FOMC tonight, so yeah, I don't know if FOMC. Thanks, Real Life Spare. Good to know. Yeah, I don't know if FOMC is just going to cause some big drama, but there's a couple of things like on the dollar, which for me it could go either way. So obviously we could have double bottomed here and just having taken out the stops. I'm a little bit wary of the dollar because back in when's that, July 2023 and in September 2024, I was hoping for both these lows to hit into this weekly zone here where I have this cross, which was and it never came to where I wanted it to. So it's entirely possible that we've made the low now. However, my preference would be that we come, it doesn't even have to bounce off the top here, but that we come into this yearly zone, which hasn't been tested yet. So, both ways on the dollar, we could have made a double bottom here and it could front run me and just try and go straight back up again, or we could get a bigger drop down into here. Now, I don't know if it's all going to happen today with FOMC, but obviously there's a chance. As it stands, we had a good pump towards the end of the day yesterday, but again, it's just taken us back up into daily supply. There's a weekly a little bit higher. Looks like it might make a 3-month. No, that's not. It's not a 3-month. So yeah, now we just need this to come back down and test here and see, are we going to just power straight through it and continue the downtrend, or are we going to get another move up? And as I've talked about in FX as well, like we have particularly on the Aussie chart, for example, this is Aussie futures, but Aussie itself is like less choppy, but looks very similar. We have all these trend line stops that we're leaving below. So I think, we're kind of getting primed for the possibility of taking out all these stops. And again, like, I don't know, sorry, fly in my face. I don't know if that's going to happen today on FOMC, and nor do I know, if we're going to get some sort of, manipulation up before that happens, much the same as we got down here. Although they didn't have the same stop layout here, that would have been the stops in the reverse direction. But and in this case, in fact, probably actually had stops below more than anything else that wicked here. But, that kind of manipulation before the reversal, like, I'm not sure if this is going to give some sort of manipulation before taking those stops out. All of the majors are in or approaching 3 months, 6 months, 1 year supply. In fact, the euro is possibly a swing fail, if it swing fails, of this annual level here. And again, like, are we going to come down and take all these stops out? Is this ready to happen? I just lost a screen. Is this ready to happen now? I'm not sure. Or, again, we could still break out. So, if the dollar goes down to the annual level, then, this can still come up here. So I guess we'll see, again, even the euro is this sort of giant double bottom, so it's primed to either break out or die. It's its now second try at taking out this high, so I guess we'll see. And yeah, so that's kind of it on I guess, yeah, so we need to see what's going to happen with FOMC and get a bit more clarity around these structures. I need to see, so basically what the short version is, everything's at supply, major supply, all the majors on the FX market, and including all the indices. However, they're all coming from major demands and all have local demands below, so we haven't broken anything. So the pound has broken a little bit today. But again, we haven't broken, still got weeklies and things below. We haven't broken anything significant enough to make me think we're going to get a massive down move as yet, and i.e. the equivalent of the up move in the dollar. The indices, let's just look at S&P, take that off. Again, the indices are pretty much the same. They're all, in the case of S&P, it's a monthly supply. I think Nasdaq's in a 2 week. Aussie and pound are nearly at the top and potentially, either going to make a lower high or take out the high. And yeah, so they're all the others, yeah. And oh, actually, no, Russell just front run my 2 month supply. J225 is in 2-3 month supply as well. So they're all in kind of major zones. And again, off the lows, they all came off, either annual demand, like say Aussie and Nasdaq both hit annual demand at the lows. The others kind of front run very slightly. Not all of them, they're all kind of a bit mixed. But you can see that the S&P here has come off that previous high, so it may not have got quite to the demand that I wanted it to in the annual, a little bit lower. And they've obviously had a very strong move up. So the annual structure is still up. But that doesn't mean we're not either going to get a retracement here or that we're reversing. This can still make a lower high. So I certainly don't want to be longing, particularly up here, although I have put a couple of aggressive ones in just for fun. I did actually have one on this weekly zone on S&P, but I deleted it because I got scared. Well, I'm not scared, but I also thought it was a bit stupid. But anyway, as you can see, it's, they've got these lower time frame trendline stops. They all look very similar, except for the Euro 50 is the only one I think that looks a bit different to this. And Japan maybe a little bit as well, but they've all got these sort of trendline stops. They've all got gaps below that haven't been tested. Actual gaps on the chart, as well as gaps in price action where price has moved up fast. They haven't come back and tested any of these weekly zones below. So again, at some point, I expect them to come back down there, but then they're also the indices. They can keep going up for a very long time, years, before these significant moves. And we've already had, a massive move recently. So perhaps this is just going to break out and keep going up for a while before we get another correction, based on that annual demand at the low. But locally, again, the trend line stops, make me kind of more inclined to potentially look for shorts, because I think if they happen, they'll be good ones. Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of up to you what you trade. And again, like the majors on the FX market, it's basically the same scenario. There's locally, I can see down, and we're in high time frame supply, but we're not getting, the structure isn't there. So the indices for the first time made a daily supply for the first time in a long time. And they did reject off them, but obviously again hasn't got through demand. So they're a little bit variable. So like I say, the Euro 50 and Aussie, I think now have made higher time frame supply. Most of the others, I think, have just made dailies, and the Japanese is the only one that still has been strong. And it's a bit concerning because I think still potentially could run through this larger zone. But yeah, so my bias is for a correction, but I still need to see more to prove that. How that affects crypto, I don't really know as well, because we're not even, like I talk about that, but we're not even massively following what the TradFi is doing at the moment. So what I can tell you, so on crypto, the very quick summary is still holding demand, which I haven't got drawn in anymore actually because it was getting too cluttered. But we're still holding, the range, the local range, the demand. I've got this channel in here, which has only got 1 point at the base, just in case we come down, maybe we could hold a channel here if it drops further. But what did happen is we made a weekly supply. So when price closed on Sunday, you can see this red candle closed very slightly underneath that green candle, making a weekly supply. So it's, like I say, it's weak. We are still in range, so it's kind of mixed. But what I'm basically seeing is we're still in range. Demand is still holding, but we're starting to build a bit of supply above. And I'm seeing that like across kind of all crypto. Any of the things that were at the stronger side of majors and ether, and the same with this. So again, until we break this demand, we can't be bearish. But to start shorting off these local supplies, I don't think it's a bad thing. Maybe I'll disclaimer that by saying wait until FOMC is done, just in case we get some craziness tonight. And the price action in here has just been awkward anyway. So you'll know that if you watch my last video, you know I was short biased based on the 3-day, and then the 12-hour inside it. The wick went right to the top of the 3-day, but didn't quite get. I kind of thought maybe it would test a level in here that was a bit missed on the low time frame. Didn't quite get up there, but sort of still held this 3-day zone for a bigger drop, but again, needs to break demand. Then I added, again, it was just a little bit too conservative here, and we were talking about it at the time because there was an old CME gap, which I've sorted in here, but show you. So there was an old CME gap here that hadn't quite been closed. And it turned out it just exactly rejected that level. But at that point, I was kind of thinking maybe we get a little push higher into this 8 hour, or even take out the stops above there. Yeah, unfortunately we didn't, so we just missed my potential short entry on that. And similarly on US dollar dominance, you know, we had 5-day demand had already been made. Again, I think I've deleted it for now because it came into the 3-day, but so it made a 3-day demand down here, then it made a 5-day sitting on top of it, came back and tested that. But again, while we were dropping the day before yesterday, I was hoping for that drop to come down into here, a little bit lower, but it bounced a little bit higher, and thus missing the confluence on the short. So yeah, with hindsight, you know, maybe I should have looked more aggressively in this 4 hour, but I guess that first bounce looked like it was going to be weak, and it was, you know, it happened quite quickly. This the reversal that we had on Bitcoin on was it Monday? Yeah, Monday. Yeah, so anyway, like I say, I'm kind of biased to the short side. The other thing, the really important thing is yesterday CME. So while we made a dubious daily supply on the US dollar and Korea pair. CME made a daily supply and also a 5-day. So again, so my bias is turning to bearish. You know, we've got a swing fail of all-time high. We still have monthly demand, 2 monthly demand below. In the case of the US dollar pair. But you know, once you start making higher time frame supply like this, then you know the chances are all the people who longed here are going to be panicking now because they thought they were going to see a new all-time high immediately. And this is not rocket science to trade. You know, while you're in this area, look for shorts. If you know we get a giant green candle that closes up here, it's going to flip this to demand, and then we're going to long off the top of it. But for now, I am biased to the short side. The difficulty, so the only difficulty, and I haven't actually added any new entries on this because for some reason I think this week I've just been wasting more time on my computer than I needed to waste. I feel like I've been working constantly but not got much done. So I haven't added any new entries on this. I think I was just looking at that on Monday and that was it. And even the difficulty here was after you have these big drops, it's like how much of the drop is it going to retrace? And then on the current drop, and the current price action, you know, again, it's triangling, which again causes a challenge because, so this is weak demand because it hasn't broken there, but then the moment this is weak supply because it hasn't broken demand. So you end up in this kind of triangle structure, and then you've just got to wait until you can see which way it's going to break. And my bias would definitely have been short because of that hit on the daily, but I didn't put an entry in there because I haven't been looking at it. So yeah, anyway, we'll see what happens with FOMC, but the short version is, you know, again, you can look for possibility of a wick up here if we get it, possibility of wick up there if we get it. This is still bullish based on this still holding, but starting to feel a bit short due to the weekly supply and then the 5-day on CME, etc. So I hope that makes sense. A little bit messy, but yeah, it's messy. And like I say, I'm not. I think you can scout this low time frame, but I'm not trading it. The other thing is I think nobody else is. So let me just go on to this quickly. So this is the coinalized data. So you can see the CBD's just been dropping on Coinbase and on aggregated CBD spot. Like nobody's buying into this. There's, you know, arguably there's a bit of divergence, but it's not enough. We're sort of sideways. And in fact, even futures, so the futures which were really pushing the move at the weekend and then last week aren't even buying into it. So there were a lot of shorts and longs going in on the drop from Monday into Tuesday. Or was that just Tuesday? There were a lot of shorts and longs both going in at the same time. So then we got this aggressive bounce off the bottom, but then I said that there was a fair chance we were just going to get back up to, you can't even see, I mean, there's just a string of hourly red candles. There's a fair chance we were going to get back up to this consolidation because that's where a lot of the shorts had gone in, and then potentially take out those shorts. And a lot of shorts did drop off at this point. And then other than that, we've just seen, longs and shorts are kind of relatively flat at the moment. So there's not much that I can really say on the data. So I think maybe everybody's kind of waiting it out. So yeah, you can see we had these rises in OI and then that drop off once we hit the high there. And I think that was some longs closing, some shorts closing. And ever since then, it's just been sideways. Yeah, so nothing much more to say on that. Lower time frame, like I say, I haven't added anything, so it's just those previous entries that I've talked about if they get revisited. And then below I just want to watch. So I'm not assuming we're going to get down here today, which probably means we will. But again, I haven't changed anything below, and I just haven't been looking at this as much. So you can take my local analysis, but take the levels below I'm looking at sort of relatively with a pinch of salt. I had this as area circled because there were a bunch of large walls in there. 93,800, I think there were 93,800, 93,500. So again, worth watching. Not surprising that there are going to be some big walls in that area, but there was very little up here. There was some at 100k. So yeah, you'd expect some people to jump in at 100k, so maybe that will be support. And then this 93 area. And as I had before, I still was hoping that we would take out stops from there and potentially. So maybe, if we fall, we get a bounce into here, everybody FOMOs in because of the walls, etc., then we take that out before we reverse. So, and we might go, so that's possible, but I've just kind of circled that as an area to consider if we get down there. Yeah, so nothing more on that. Ether. Where are we? I'm not sure if anybody's still listening. Feel free to ask any questions if you want. Ether's basically exactly the same. So, again, we don't even need to talk about this in much detail, but as of yesterday, the US dollar pair, the Korea pair both made daily supply. They both hit and rejected off that today. And then on the CME pair, we have a new 5-day supply and a new 1 day. So the 5 day is higher, so 2,600. So if we get a wick up into 2,600, and the daily is where we're rejecting off at the moment. So I think the CME is kind of important. Like, yeah, I think if we get some fuckery in FOMC today, and either Bitcoin, so Ether into the 2,600 area, and Bitcoin would be just taking out the stops over the last high up to sort of 105,920 on the CME chart, but there's a bit of a premium. It's an actually very low premium at the moment. It's only a couple of $100. So it would be 105, sort of 700 potentially on the US dollar chart, so just a little bit higher than the previous high. So just keep an eye out for that, and just be aware that if we get that, the move is likely, and it works, then the move is potentially going to be bigger because of that 5 day on CME. So yeah, Ether basically the same scenario. It's got a weekly demand, where while we're holding demand, we can't be like macro bearish. I'm sorry, I'm mid time frame bearish. Macro, I am bearish. Again, reiterate. Ether for me is in 3 month supply. I'm biased to short, but I need to get given the structure to do so, and it's being a mess. But that 5 day is decent, and potentially CME is also going to make a 2 day today. The only thing on CME is it left the gap above, but then Ether CME gaps are much less inclined to fill. And yeah, the only other thing on Ether that's just, but at the moment is looking pretty ropey, was that the BTC pair made a weekly demand. So, but again, it was bony by a hair and is coming now right back down into it. So for what it's worth, it might not be worth much. It also made the same daily supply. So, it's come down deep. It's kind of trying to take out that daily demand in there. And yeah, so, but again, it's possible that this runs. Like, I would have preferred this to be, this whole thing to be happening in here if I was going to be very biased short. Like, if I was trading this pair, I wouldn't be shorting just off a daily supply here. 61 fib, sure, but I would prefer on this to be shorting in this area if I was trading it. So it doesn't mean it won't fall from here. Yeah, so nothing much more on that. Oh yeah, the only other thing on Ether is, yeah, I've still got an entry. I haven't got up marks on this chart. I've still got the possibility of a long entry on this 4-hour demand, and it's kind of fairly heavily and even more heavily disclaimed now. It's been there for a while, that zone. Just put it in here. It's been here for a while because I was hoping it would hit earlier, one of these previous, and there was a point in time, I think, yeah, so interim bounce level if alignment with BTC on 5-day, so I need to kind of take that out because BTC doesn't have a 5-day anymore. I was going to say if alignment with BTC, but yeah. So if BTC hits some sort of a demand at the same time, then you can maybe consider this 4-hour demand if we're just going to get a wick from the range. But then obviously I'm saying, remember, we're still coming out of 3-month supply. And then I also said 2080 is possible support. So again, yeah, just picking up this level is a possibility. But again, there's just, there's too many possibilities. So, and, when there's a lot of possibilities, quite often we run through all possibilities. So just be very, very careful. And I still think alts are much better to be trading. So yeah, just quick run through of the market cap charts. Where are we? Amazingly, my computer's doing okay so far. So, and this is things I've talked about multiple times already, so I won't go into huge amounts of detail, but similar scenario. So total was obviously always the stronger one, being as BTC was stronger, but it's coming to perilously close to this trend line now. And you'll see there's a sort of triangle structure on others that we've had that's already broken down from previously. And some protein shape. It made a new daily supply. It's coming off there. It didn't make a 5-day or anything on this. I think it already had a 5-day, which it was retesting. So, and again, it's overarchingly in the monthly. So I can't be biased any other direction to down on this. Obviously things don't have to drop, but and it is coming off a 3-month at the lows, but you would generally expect some sort of a decent, or well, in a perfect world, I would want a retracement into here or into here before looking for a next up move. I don't always get that. Crypto obviously can be more aggressive. BTC could still hold through here and just go up straight from here. But if that's the case, then that's the case. And then, as I say, it goes up and then I buy a retest. But for me, while I'm in a larger supply, my bias is looking for shorts. If they present themselves, that's not looking for longs. So yeah, and so in the case of this, so in the case of total and total 2, it's basically the same. So like I want to see a move down into here or into here to look for long entries. Total 2 is basically the same, but looking more ropey, looking more like it's going to fall off a cliff here. So again, just need to see the tests if they get down there. This made weekly supply and it rejected weekly supply. I've still got the 3-day in there. So, they tried to look like they were flipping a 3-day demand, but the higher time frame still was winning. Total 3 is the same, except it's already on support. And this is looking more like a lot of the majors. They're actually probably some of them are quite a bit lower than this now, but they're sort of third, fourth test on this level now. And yeah, at this stage, I'm thinking they're going to run through. And again, crypto can surprise me sometimes by holding third, fourth, fifth tests. People see this as a support, then people see this as a support. Doing my lines. But again, like I would prefer here, and in fact, and again, I've talked many times. Total 3 doesn't reflect it actually, but we'll look at others. I've talked many times about the bigger picture of this being a head and shoulders. So that's kind of what I was looking for on this, for this to be a head and shoulders. Ideally, I would have wanted this a bit higher, but in fact, it makes a better head and shoulders if it's not, because the whole point of a head and shoulders is showing weakness. And the weakness would mean that this low ideally is under that low, so you've got a neckline slopes that way, and that this shoulder is below this shoulder. So it's showing the buyers are weakening. The buyers are stronger here, now the buyers are weaker. And then you want to see higher volume on the sell-off. And similarly here. So supposed to be, you should really look at all the full volume on that. But anyway, this is kind of essentially doing what I'm expecting at the moment. And then again, the zones that could hold retests, we could still, that's still a possibility before the fall. So I'm still watching out for that. And then, the cleanest next demand on this would be down here. So again, just need to see what happens. And total DeFi the same. Again, had that 3-day. It's made a daily supply. I'm expecting that to come down into there. And I recently added total E100. There's some new metrics they've got on the market cap charts on TradingView. So total, this is a total excluding the top 100. So which is kind of nice because, yeah, I suppose the top, we were using total 3 and others for that, but total 3 is excluding Bitcoin and Ether. Others excludes the top 10, but actually the top 100. There's also a top 50 if you prefer that, but that's not vastly different. But again, it's still holding this 3-month level here after having the immediate test, the retest. The retest did make a higher high, but now it's come out and taken out the low. And I guess the bullish case on this would be like a broadening wedge, and we're just going to go up from there. But again, my instinct in the bigger picture is that we had this impulse, we had a correction, A wave, this is a B wave, and this is a C wave. And now the C wave can make, this is a dramatic, can make a zigzag like that, or it can make a triangle, and maybe this low is trying to make that triangle. That is the bullish possibility. But again, that kind of probably would be my preferred triangle to get down into this area, given what we're doing at the moment and given the supply. So in the case of this, it has very neatly, this is why this chart's kind of nice. It's a little bit neater than others. It's coming right off monthly supply there. It's just tapped into it. If it's a monthly supply, I expect a decent sized drop. It's come into weekly demand. It's now tried 3 times, coming a bit deeper. It's still holding it for now. Does still have a daily zone here. But again, bias is to the high time frame is for down for me. So it's shorting any retests. And then, yeah, finally the dominance chart. So, we keep hoping that this is going to die off and give alts some leeway. I don't even know really why this. I'm not convinced by the calculation on this chart anymore, because we're seeing a green candle today, but yet when we look at US dollar dominance, we're also seeing a green candle, and this is more. Yeah, this should really be the inverse, but isn't. I've seen a bit of data anomalies sometimes in this, so it's a little bit confusing. But maybe it's the lower time frames. Not sure, but anyway, so still in 6-month supply here. So there is still a very distinct possibility that this is going to double top. We had our bounce, we had our wick into it, we've crawled up high, we're crawling again. And the crawling's hard. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the channel, that, when you have a crawl up like this, it can just mean it's weak. But then also it could be accumulating. But then this is not a price chart, so I don't know, it's difficult for me to judge on that. Still has weekly demand, again, still is very much in an uptrend, but is in a very macro supply. It's just a question of, whether it can push higher into this supply, come all the way up here, for example, before we get another decent correction on it. Ether dominance, I think, also has the weekly demand. So this, again, kind of points for me to wanting up. If I was trading this, I would kind of potentially look for an up on this. But I don't know, like the narrative just doesn't really fit with that. I mean, maybe can Ether get another move more than BTC? I'm slightly inclined to think that BTC would drop more, but I don't know if that's ever really a thing. We always talk about Ether BTC going up, meaning Ether's going up. But there must be some periods of a negative correlation if I go back over time, where ETH US dollar is going down and ETH BTC is going up because Bitcoin crashes more. I might have a look at that at some stage. But yeah, still there's a huge green candle here that it would be nice to at least retrace some of, even if it comes back down into this area. I'm not sure what's over to the left, yeah, even if it just comes back down into that area rather than going all the way back to the bottom. Others dominance is kind of the critical one, I guess, for others, and I've been saying this for a while, that we were coming in this larger flag, if you can see that top line of the channel. And I was saying I wanted it to come down here. Just at the earlier stages, I would have again preferred it to wick up into there first, but it didn't. Then it made a 3-week supply here, which is why I had that circle, and then it rejected off there, a little bit lower, in fact, and came back. And now this is where I'm saying it hasn't come back down there yet, but that is kind of where I expect it to be heading to. It's again made 5-day supply that it's rejected there. It's made a new 4-day as of yesterday. So again, this is still, falling out the bottom of that, and we would expect that to get to the next support, and the next support is somewhere around here. So when we get to 6-month demand, 5-day from the previous up move, and then we pray that holds, because otherwise all the alts are going to zero. But yeah, so really I don't think you should be thinking about buying alts for the long term until this gets down into here, no matter what direction it takes in the interim. And until others gets at least to there, but if not, possibly to there. maybe E100 is better, but even that, again, impossible interim bounce on this daily, but down here is where I would want to be really looking for alts to potentially make another move. And, at that stage, I'm just not even sure, are we even going to get, maybe it's an ABC and then we get another wave up. But, is it just going to be, because this is kind of resembling now, I was thinking a lot of these now are resembling Litecoin. Because Litecoin had this annual demand. I don't know, I'll have to look back through that. Anyway, yeah, so that's kind of generally my views on the alt market, which are higher time frame, not particularly good. That doesn't mean we're not going to get mini rallies. Obviously, we get lots of green and lots of red candles on the lower time frames. I'm looking very high time frames on these. It can take its sweet time. It could fall down here in 3 days if it wants to, or it could fall down here over the period of 6 months. So we'll have to see. But overarchingly, also, the real critical thing is where the 6 months are going to close. So really, on alts, you should be looking at all your 6-month charts. This is actually coming off an annual demand here, this bounce. But yeah, I think this is kind of what I was thinking, sadly, on alts. Again, it might take some time to get here, but in fact, that's probably my ultimate target on this. Like if I look at that, as an impulse, an ABC coming down into this 6-month demand before we get potentially another alt season. And like I said, this 6-month chart, that's from 2018, so this can take 2 years to actually get down to here, 5 years even, but we shall see. Just interested as to what plays out over time. But yeah, so really be looking at your alt charts on obviously monthly closes at the end of June, but 3-month and 6-month closes, because I'm already saying some things that are going to make 6-month supply, 3-month supply. I think I've seen maybe one 6-month demand. Can't for the life of me remember which one. But it is important, and I'll show you. So, for example, bananas. I actually hadn't finished my alerts before this string, but so bananas 31. See how quickly that's bounced. It's a bit just a wick, and I don't know if this is going to last, but this is why you should be watching. That a handful of these, not many. This has a monthly demand there, so if you want to be long bias and you want to find that one that goes, 10, 50, 100 times, these are the ones that might be it. That doesn't mean go out and go all in bananas, now to that candle, it's only a 1-hour candle, but this is certainly something you should watch for the follow-up. It's very wicky off the bottom here, so it's not the prettiest chart. I do think it is on all the exchanges though. Yeah, so it's on every exchange. And it's wicked too low, so the alert went on that. But again, just keep an eye on this for some sort of a build up here, because if that monthly does hold, then potentially you can get the big moves. FLUX was another one actually that came in earlier, so I had an alert for 2-month and 6-month demand. So this is the KuCoin chart, so this won't be shown on the Binance chart, which is always a little bit of a risk. But again, if this comes down into this 2-month zone, if it gets a bounce, you can just put your stop under there. It's a 6-month inside it, but if it gets a bounce, it could have a significant move up. This is a huge move that it had off that zone, and they don't all work. Look at it on the log, it makes it look a little bit nicer. They don't all work, and this, by this stage is going to have, probably haven't got all the supplies put in, but that's going to have a 6-month level there unless it bounces really hard in the next 2 weeks. Not even 2 weeks now, 10 days. So it's got a 3-month supply up there. So obviously you have to look at the new supply that's been put in and to see how far it's going to go. But if you're going to pick something, ideally you want something without supply. But if you want to pick something, you could pick the ones that are hitting major demands. No worries, real ice bear. Top of the hour. What is top of the hour? Oh, I guess 6 o'clock. But it's probably not 6 o'clock for you if you're going to having a meeting then. But again, yeah, these are what you should be watching. Things that are coming back into the start of this big impulse. These are the ones that may do giant pushes. And it's what we've seen in the past with some of the major movers, is when they do come back into, so in this case, RUNE, just picking any example that I knew had a pump, this has come back into weekly demand, or just almost tapped down into the 3-month there, obviously just slightly front run the low, and then huge move off that area. Look at BTT, might be another one again. It's a monthly or 3 monthly demand here. Obviously, looks like it's slightly front run at there, but then again, very big move. So this is why it's critical to like really look at all the alts. Sorry, what your alts are looking like with regard to the high time frame supply and demand. And it is, and I said this in the FX video yesterday. I did results video. Like it is the prime time that I see people who don't trade supply and demand fail is because they're sticking very firmly normally to a lower time frame strategy, quite often SMC, smart money concept strategy, because everybody's using that at the moment, but they haven't checked the higher time frames. So I'll see, and you don't have to trade supply and demand, I'm not telling you that, but what I am saying is that you shouldn't trade long into zones. So you should at least have the, even if you don't want to draw by boxes like I do, at least have the lines drawn on your chart. But like here, for example, where I'm looking for shorts on a regular basis, I'll see people going, oh, look, this is going to break out long this. And I'm like, well, you're longing right into 2 month supply there with a 3 month right above it. Do you really want to be longing there? Yeah, things like that. So, and then similarly, on the less so on the short side because it's mainly because crypto Twitter always likes to long. Yeah, on a regular basis, do I sort of think, well, it hasn't broken structure and it hasn't broken supply, so why are you looking for longs into supply? Anyway, what else? Okay, so let's quickly go over the majors. So TRX and BCH are kind of the only ones that are a little bit different. So basically on most of the majors, I'll just a really quick run through. So Litecoin, most of them look like Litecoin. They made a 5-day supply. They either tested or didn't quite test this 5-day zone above. And they ran through a 3-day, turned out to be a swing failure. And then they flipped the 3-day back to supply and the 5-day supply. Unfortunately, again, I didn't get any shorts in here because I wasn't looking at it closely enough. And then I threw in very late short possibilities on the 5-day on DOT and NEAR, and neither of them quite got there, unfortunately. And again, that's like the downside of waiting for confluences. Like we had, I think, like I was saying, giving updates in the channel that XRP had got there first, I think, then followed by Link, and followed by Sol, then Link, and they were all in the zone. But then we had the others were further off, and again, normally you see them kind of all hit at the same time. And I'll show you on the majors, on the new majors in a minute. But Litecoin basically has a sort of similar structure, and you can see what I'm saying here about, this could be a broadening wedge, could pick up support here and go up, could be a bearish broadening wedge, could go up to here and then have a bigger drop. But we've now got 1, 2, 3, 4 hits on this weekly daily demand in here, so I just expect to come lower. Whether it's going to be able to pick up support in here. This is a 61 fib and the weekly, so I've got another alert in there. We shall see. But it's a bit nerve-wracking on some of these. And again, if that head and shoulders plays out, like I said, on the others charts, then obviously these are then going to drop significantly lower. But I've got some new zones incoming. I haven't put any new shorts in yet because I just need to think about things. And I normally put them a little bit on the fly. I'm not analysing these as detailed as I want to at the moment. So Ripple, again, we had that 3-day demand alert that it went really, really deep inside, but did hold eventually. Problem is with Ripple is it made a weekly supply. So this thing is the only one that made a weekly. So I've still got the 3-day drawn in because it hasn't broken. It's a weekly supply, a little bit like Bitcoin's. But again, still expecting probably a propeller move off this, and it'll be very interesting on this to see what the monthly, if it closes under this monthly and makes a monthly supply, then it's really not going to be good, then I'll be much more short biased. At the moment it's right between the two. It could close, and if it closes above 2.19ish, that's the wrong level, 2.19 still. If it closes above there, it'll create a monthly demand. If it closes below 2.09 with that 10-cent boundary, it's going to create a monthly supply, so it's going to be interesting. I did add another alert on this today, actually, just because I kind of remembered I was looking at somebody else's analysis, and I remembered that we still have this annual level here. There's another one significantly lower. There is another proper annual demand is down here. Where's that? 83 cents, a long way down. But I do think it's possible that this level holds a retest. If we did have swing fail, triple hit to the low, it's possible that holds us another retest if the market isn't ready to drop, even if this just gets another, brief move. So I've alerted that level, so I guess we'll see. And do BCH at the end. TRX is the other concern as to, I've just added this to the new majors and I'm kind of getting used to it a little bit. So it made a weekly demand. So I thought it was worth looking for longs. It got one move up into there. Actually really pushed. So TRX had an IPO. Apparently it's going to have an IPO. So that's what would that, let me go to the lower time frame so you can actually see it. So that's what that big pump was. Then it came back down for the retest and I had another long entry for that. So that gave a decent move, but just back up into supply and has now gone lower. And again, my concern a little bit with this is, we were in this daily supply anyway. So part of me was looking for shorts. Making a weekly demand then makes me think, okay, maybe this is not ready for a short. However, an IPO seems like a good enough top signal. So I'm just, again, not sure if this is potentially going to be an overall market top signal. It's probably sort of the biggest consolidation correction it's had for a while. Does have monthly demand down here, so again that would be potentially a nice bottom signal if we get down here. It's a 2-week, and it might end up as a 2-month demand, I think, in there. Yeah. So again, depending on when it hits that could end up as a 2-month demand. Apparently, is an offset monthly, but it has a 2-week at the same level anyway. So again, decent potential market low if TRX kind of revisits that area. And then finally BCH, which is obviously one of the outliers and still continuing to be strong. So kind of been getting little trades on this in both directions. So I think since I last updated, we had a short that was off just a lower high looking for that, and then back into a 3-day demand for a long. I feel like actually this, I think I put in another alert for the possibility of a lower high on this 4-hour supply. When it came back there, but obviously, it didn't. It went up, and I think no problem. Potentially, still would have been okay if your stop had been above that high, but didn't give much of a move down before again breaking out. So now I've got an aggressive long on this 1-day demand there. There's a weekly below, so they're kind of 2 levels I'd look on this, and obviously it depends on whether the market's kind of really going to do a big drop as to whether this is just going to run through now. But again, it's nice to just keep considering the trading in both directions. Maybe now it's come up over here, it's going to refine support, having had support previously in this area. Very badly drawn, but it might refine support around on that level there. The consideration with BCH, obviously, as I've talked about many times before, is that we're in this large 3-month supply, but then we're coming off this equally large or bigger 6-month demand. So the higher time frames are, confusing. And I haven't checked the BTC pair on this either. So anyway, a couple of levels there for you to watch. Then on the other majors, so BNB again, I talked about in the last stream of potentially making a head and shoulders. And again, so I had kind of aggressive short there, which did get taken out. Actually, no, this was on 3-day supply, so actually, but I think we'll still be. I know maybe it did take out. So I think it has swing failed the 3-day. But then I had another re-entry on 12-hour supply in there. So that one worked pretty nicely and is still dropping from there. If it came higher, that was another possibility. But I talked about this, that potentially, again, I'd want this down here. This is another one that you should very much keep an eye on if it revisits here, because this is also a new monthly demand that it's made. But again, check the BTC pair on this, because I really didn't like it last time I looked at it. It was coming off a 3-month supply. So, but I'm not sure how it's looking now and what alignment you'd get with the BTC pair if this hits. And again, for what it's worth, because Link BTC is also on 6-month demand. It doesn't mean it's not going to go deeper inside it, but again, I'm still looking for the possibility of that big move on Link. But yeah, looking at this chart, again, from a confluence perspective, it's got a decent way it can drop, even if it holds local demand. Then all these other ones, again, like I've said, are similar. And in fact, I think even BNB, they've all got, so you can see the large pink area that I've drawn are all 5-day supply. And now these are the ones that I wanted to be bullish on. So ADA now is coming back into the 6-month demand. Dogecoin is back into annual demand. And Link is also in a larger 6-month That's a little bit deeper inside it. So they are kind of, after that initial bounce, they are retesting these very high time frame zones again on very high time frames. But in many cases, and not in the case of Link, but in the case of Doggy, it hit a monthly supply at the high. And in the case of ADA, it hit this, or retested this monthly zone at the high. So again, it's just being torn between, is the monthly going to play out, the monthly downtrends, are they going to play out for the lower low, even if we still hold the higher time frame? So this 6 month demand, for example, let's say on ADA. So it's probably the cleanest one to look at, but this is your 6 month demand. So this can still play out and still retain this uptrend. We've got a 3 month actually overlapping underneath it. So you can see with the 3 month, it came down very deeply inside it, and it messed around here for quite a long time before we got the big move off the 3 month. So, and it's the same here, is this, and in fact that came right back down to the start of this move. So what we've got at the same time here is this huge move up, but we haven't tested the start. So it could still retain this 6 month structure for a massive move up, but it can still go back down here first. Or it will bounce here for a higher low. It doesn't have to go to the bottom, but it can. So what we're looking, we had that initial bounce, or we had an initial bounce off here. Then we had a retest bounce off here, which is still holding, this kind of dubious support of nothing in the middle of the zone. And, again, we've had a decent move up, but it had, it made a higher low here. So are we going to make another higher low? Are we kind of already in this messing around phase that we had here? Or is this just going to plow through for another down move before we get probably some consolidation here before that bigger up move? So that's kind of why I end up being so indecisive on the majors. But again, just trade zones as and when they hit. So in the case of this anyway, it's just run through weekly demand there. So I'm going to delete that off. Got that new 5-day supply. Again, I have nothing that I put extra in that. It's just had an alert go for this daily zone if it's going to hold. It's a little bit off maybe some of the others. So with FOMC, I'd probably say just leave it. See, I've got, in fact, so sorry, on this, the 5-day is higher. So I think, yeah, actually, they already had 5 days from 2 days ago up here. And now this has also made a 4-day and a daily locally. So again, still just quite challenging. And let me see what BNB, yeah, BNB had and came off the 5-day at the top there. And made a new daily, came off that. Link basically the same. Let's see what we've got, the 5-day. So yeah, 5-day supply, it came up inside it, rejected down. I think it didn't make a new 4-day on this, but did make a daily, which it's rejected off today. So again, that would be my next area of interest on Link. And then finally, Doggy Coins. So the alert went for this weekly demand here. And again, retest of the annual level, which is already had there. So we already had that first bounce, didn't get very high. And this again has 5-day supply up here that it didn't get close to testing. It's actually one of the weakest ones, and now has made a 4-day, which it's come off there today. I should probably draw that in. So there's a slightly offset 4 days, they're not ideal, but again, and that's why I say it's been difficult, because these zones are large. I can't, I don't in good conscience put an alert here and say 4-day supply when it's so close to price, because I'm so close to demand, because it could still easily go all the way up to the top, and even like we saw with Ripple, could take out the high on a swing fail before coming all the way back down again. But yeah, anyway, we've got a weekly demand that's coming into here, so you can keep an eye on this for the possibility of a long, but be careful. And again, it's this sort of similar to scenario to ADA, in that the retracement back here came all the way back down to the start. Is this retracement going to come all the way back down to the start here, and that lower cross, or even the weekly a little bit higher? So just don't know if these, it's got to bounce off the monthly here, so it could still hold. So again, we're just still hoping for the higher low. Then from the monthly perspective, the monthly chart. In the case of Doggy, actually, it didn't test the monthly, so I feel like there's a 2 month over here. So I think, yeah, it just tapped into the 2 month level, and maybe I think there's just weekly supply in there. So in fact, Doggy only got a bounce up to weekly supply. It does have a monthly supply higher. So again, I can just still see sort of multiple scenarios on this. It's, is it going to pick up this higher time frame here, already make a higher low, come into here, and then drop? Or, alternatively come into there, but then could play out the annual. So you're looking at just all the playing out of different zones. So yeah, there's still a zone up there that hasn't been tested, but we're much closer to price. We've got a lot more concerns. Again, if you're looking for higher time frame longs, I'd probably be looking around the 12 cents mark if price gets down there. So yeah, just hit a weekly demand there, and with the daily just below it, which I haven't got alerted. Yeah, this has already been tested, so I don't love it, but just see if we get a dip into this weekly. So that's those majors, and then finally we have, so dot near Atom and Sol. Looking pretty ropey today. So starting with dot, so yeah, like I said, dot and near are the only two that I put, this one, that I put alerts on this 5-day supply here. As you can see, the alert's still there, didn't quite hit it, and near is the same. We had a second bounce off here, did get a decent move on that long entry, and now as I've said many times on dot, I still really wanted this down here. I didn't like where that low was at all, just floating in the middle of nowhere. We've also come off 3 months supply at the high, doesn't even have to bounce there, but that's where the alert is for the next possible long. But if it's coming off 3 months supply, show you the 3-month chart. And this might be one that might make 6 months supply, but when you see something coming off 3 months supply like that, this can have a significant red candle if it wants to. It's going to make a new 6-month up here, possibly a 6-month offset at around that same level. So yeah, interesting. I wonder if that's where it rejected actually. I've actually got that 6-month on the chart. Doesn't look like I have. I've got the yearly. Yeah, so I mean this wick, it's confirmation bias really, but you can see that wick has basically rejected off what I've got as a yearly level at the moment, but that potentially is going to be a 6-month level in there. So yeah, you can see this is sort of dropping further now, coming into sort of a 12-hour demand inside this 5-day, whatever it is. Again, not looking very good. Near, probably basically the same, which I'll look at that chart as well. So near is like a higher time frame. I'm more bullish on this because of it's got a monthly demand, but then really it isn't acting vastly different to anything else. And in fact, where the others all made it, actually the others all made it a 3-month supply, but to be fair, their 3 months and 2 months are much lower. But yeah, so near I had hoped for, because I thought maybe we could get another run on this up to this monthly supply up here, any of these zones within inside it. And it's coming off monthly demand. So this is probably one of the ones I'd be most confident of getting a bounce on this layout anyway, for a higher low. But, again, it's anyone's guess at the moment. And I think there's a lot of chop. Obviously, I've got that as a possibility down there. So there's a 3 days. So that's a possible bounce. But again, could retrace all the way back down there and still hold monthly if it wants to. But again, the same 5-day, 4-day, 1-day supply that it's got above at the moment. So again, nothing really locally making me want to long this. And again, as I always say, either, people who want to FOMO in, like, you can long this based off this zone if you want at the moment, with your stop down here somewhere, if you're going to be bullish on the market as a whole. But like my preference is to wait and see what the reaction is there, and then are we going to make a lower low, or what the reaction is here? Are we going to make a lower low? If we put some giant green candle that blasts through this and then leaves this as new demand, then again, that's when I would look for the longs on the retest, because this is too much of an overall downtrend for me to think that to be confident of longing here with supply so close above. But that's entirely up to you. You can also watch, 8-hour, 4-hour time frames and just see, now it's got 8 hours supply in there. Is it going to flip this? If we get an 8-hour close, that 8-hour in. If we get an 8-hour close up here, then we could flip this to support, and then you can at least get a decent entry and see if it does break these local supplies of higher time frames above. And you can see again, I had the 5-day supply alert on this that didn't quite get tested. It also made a 4-day lower, so it just went a little bit up inside and came down. Atom actually would have been the perfect short on this. This just was actually tapped into 5-day supply. before coming down. That also made a 4-day below. Atom again, I haven't had longs for a while on this because I hate it. Delete that weekly because it's pretty much gone anyway. Level in. But yeah, so Atom, again, I've been waiting for ages to get down into here. There's 2-week demand and then there's a monthly below it. So for a long time, I've been kind of wanting to come down into this area. And this is also something you're going to have to really watch to see if it makes a 3-month supply. So yeah, in fact, I think I've already got it and I've got it as a 4-day at the moment, but there is, oh, sorry, my correction, it's already coming off 3-month supply there. So again, like I told you, the higher time frame. Yeah, there's a debate that we're in a 6-month demand here, but this is a 3-month supply. It's closed below, it's gone up inside, it's rejected, and again, I expect normally you would get a decent sized red candle out of that. We haven't got very much for the quarter, to be fair, at the moment, but that doesn't mean we're not going to end on a what do you call it, on a round of applause. That's the wrong phrase, but you know what I mean. But end on a high note. That's it. With a giant red candle coming down to this zone. But yeah, so that's again where I want to look for longs on Atom, but really not looking good at the moment. And I have to say, all of these on the BTC pairs look horrendous. So with the exception, I think, of Link being the only one that's going into demand. And I know Doggy looks on the verge of falling off a cliff and has a big drop, Doggy, the BTC pair, if it does fall off that cliff. Anyway, so you can see that none of these are looking particularly good. And Sol was the one I've kind of been less active on. So had a short off the 5-day supply up there. And it made I think it's made a new 5-day. So it made a new 5-day and came up inside it, but again, didn't have the short set on that. Still in weekly demand, but again, still overarchingly in 3-month supply, and then also just front run me on the monthly supply up there where I was looking for a short. At the moment, I've got an alert here on this. I think that's a 3-day demand in here. And it's a weekly and offset weekly. But yeah, it's a lot of these are going to depend on the strength with which the market corrects or falls. This is not a strong zone. However, if Bitcoin's ready to bounce on something at the point it gets to this zone, that doesn't mean you're not going to get a week or so of up, even if it then, so we might just get something like this going down now. And that's why I kind of, I haven't alerted all of these. I just alerted the top one, but that's why I've still got, okay, well, there's that. But it's, again, like, you should be waiting for confirmation on all of these. Like, don't trade them blindly because we are coming off the monthly supply in here. And again, this is this actually looks very similar to the others chart, but again, could still be that giant head and shoulders. So maybe we need to target, somewhere back down the base there. Let's see what the bigger picture looks like on this. Maybe we're going to go all the way back down to test this. And people laugh when I say that and they'll scoff, but the reality is it's a very real possibility. This is crypto. I've seen enough charts in crypto go all the way back down, retrace entire. I mean, frankly, people will scoff at me for saying that, but if I just say, look left, look at what happened here. Okay, we're on the linear chart, so it makes it look worse. But yeah. So if you look at this on the linear chart, this looks like this retraced all the way to the start, which it did, because that's $13 versus $3, with the high being at 250. But and again, on the bigger picture on this, we're looking at the possibility of a double top. Swing failed the high. So there is actually nothing really without the realms of possibility that it takes out this low here, maybe, and does come back down into that annual area. So, don't what's the word? God, I'm losing all my phrases today. Don't forget what you're working with, I guess. Don't forget what crypto can do. You can call this a tight range, if we get a close above. So again, on 3-month chart, if this candle, say we have a massive pump in the next 2 weeks and it closes above this red candle, then it flips that 3-month supply or week supply. It is a week supply, but it flips that to demand by closing up here. Then you can buy a retest. But to buy here with targets of 1,000, which I see so many people do, is just mental. Just see what the zones are, give when they get tested. You can see here, this is a monthly demand. I was waiting for that for a long time. It's given a decent up move off that zone. This, if we get a swing failure of that high, this is a monthly supply, it's potentially going to get a decent move off that zone. Then there's not much in the middle, and then there's a big drop before we get to the consolidation at the start of this up move, and it's a weaker up move than this. So yeah, just don't forget your high time frame structures. Anyway, what are we up to? So I've been going an hour, and I've done that pretty quickly. Yeah, so again, still supposed to be doing more on the alts than I am doing at the moment. But I got completely crucified a couple of days ago because, or yesterday morning, with 100 alerts because Bybit had a problem with its system. So I had all these alerts going, and I was like, "What's going on with the market?" And then I realised there were all these erroneous wicks on Bybit messing me up. But anyway, I'll run through some of these alerts for the next 15 minutes or so. If anyone's watching, feel free to request any chart that you may want. So since the 16th, so 2 days, you can see all these alerts have come in. So let's just go bottom up. And some of them are now, like I've said in the group, some of them now are very old alerts because, you know, we're having big drops down too. So it doesn't necessarily, they may or may not still be valid. Just depends what new zones have been put in. So here's we had a bounce on RUNE and 3 months demand came a bit deeper. I think RUNE had some bad news, didn't it? So I don't know, RUNE might not be the wisest thing to long depending on what the news is. I would go and check that if you're wanting to buy that. It's coming down into a 5-day demand here. I've moved the alert down a little bit lower because I thought this would probably drift inside it. So I had some more aggressive alerts on these because some of them are coming off the top of these 4 days, 4-day, 5-day, the pink lines, and others are dropping into the zone. And again, now very much need to look at what's above because you can see this is also, I think, you know, most of the market, like I've said with the majors, is going to have 4-day, 5-day supplies above. So, you know, if we do get alt season and we get a very strong market, then as I've said, it is possible that, you know, this is just a retracement and then we're just going to do another move up. But for now, I still will be looking for shorts in these areas on retests, considering potential possibility of larger downtrends. So there's some 5-day supplies in there. There's also a 4-day. And the other difficulty with these, you can see, is going to be the chop, you know, the largeness of these zones. So I'm just going to have to see what's worth setting alerts for and what's not. In some cases, I just say very conservative. For example, I'll just set an alert up here for the 3-day. The top of the drop, so it's likely to have a reaction. It's a smaller zone, you know, whether you put your stop just above the zone versus above the high, smaller zone, rather than trying to short off here off this 4-day, which is already wicked into anyway, with a stop that's miles away, which is not worth it for the risk to reward. So in some cases, I would just go, okay, for example, this, you know, I'd probably be looking for a short up here, but that doesn't mean it's not going to reject in any of these areas below. And in fact, you know, I probably look for longs not down until down into that daily demand. But anyway, that's really something you can keep an eye on. I think there are better things, so I'll, you know, tell you about them. But the same, you know, same here. BTT coming off 3-month supply at the high, at 3-month supply at the low. Very hard to know, you know, which is going to win here. So I'm going to go on that for sort of weekly demand. It's whipped into that today. So again, you can keep an eye on it, but there are a lot better things to long than this. LPT, ZRC's had a big move there. I'm not sure what alert got ahead on that. Maybe it was a short alert. LPT. So this was an upbit listing, I think, is what that pump was. And again, back up into 2-month supply. And I just don't know, again, do these listings have any legs to last any period of time? This banana protein is really gross. I wish I could show you this, but it's like all like congealed in. But I kind of drink it anyway just to kind of go, I've had my protein. Need to not buy this banana one again because it doesn't mix. Anyway, yeah, so LPT coming down into a weekly demand. But it's coming off 2-month supply. So again, you need to be aware that actually 3-month supply at that final high. I think I had 2 alerts go there, then a retest, and then a long alert, and then a retest alert again. So yeah, and somebody messaged me yesterday again going, should they buy alts? They wanted to know what to do. So hopefully they'll watch this. I'll tell them to watch this. Can't remember his name now, but I will hunt him down and say, watch this video. And this is 100% why I say the reason to trade both directions. You know, you had a big pump, it's come up into supply, look for shorts, comes back down into, I don't even know what that demand, I've got a feeling it was like a 2-hour or a 1 hour. Yeah, an hourly demand. very simple hourly demand, you know, after the push of the big up move. They don't all work, but they're very good risk to reward if they do work. So this one got a really nice move up. I think my alert might have gone there, but I think it rejected yeah, I had it was an hourly, I think it was an hourly and then a 2 hour and a 4 hour. And I feel like the alert went, but it rejected just a little bit earlier than I wanted. But again, could have given a really nice short from there. Now we're down enough for it to be probably like forgotten. So I guess those initial bounces you get after the pump, it's like because people are still watching it, plus the people who like FOMO'd in the top, everyone's still watching it. But once you've started to kind of do this and die off, and you can see that if you look at ALPACA, for example, then they just die. And also, like, so ALPACA as well was a delisting pump, a Binance delisting pump. So again, this is an upbit listing pump. But again, like I don't know, when Raven's another one, I just don't know if they're going to have any legs to continue. You know, is this real demand or is this just people who are waiting for the listing and now they're not going to care anymore? So this is going to just die, but it's just something to watch out for. XION, I don't even know what this is. Does this still exist? Oh, it is still. Wow, there's actually quite a few, not Binance, but quite a few exchanges on the futures side. Just a sideways consolidation. This could go either way. Just check. So I haven't like I need to go through all of these. So what I'm now starting to do is going through the, you know, the monthly, the 3 monthly, etc. But you really need to kind of keep an eye on, you know, like when I say, oh, is it okay? Just check yourself. You know, it's in because cut actually has made a 2 week demand there that it's inside. But you know, if it closes under here, it might flip that back to supply. And then maybe also, you know, maybe it's made other supplies in the interim. So this case has actually come down quite hard. So unlike most of the others that do have 5-day supplies, this hasn't. So this actually, so this is something apart from that daily. So it's got a daily immediately above. But this is something I'd be more inclined to look for a long run. Actually, even though it's one of the shittier charts, you know, it's a shittier chart from a macro perspective. If this is to be a sideways consolidation, it's, you know, it had a zone here that's been hit twice and then has run through, so it actually doesn't really need to be there anymore, but I leave it just in case. It's still making a lower high, but if it can retain the higher lows, or alternatively, you know, if you see it go down and take this out and swing fail, the bottom of the range, then, you know, then it potentially has a bigger move that it can go up, that can do upwards. You know, it's testing all the local supply, and this isn't even real supply. I really want the supply on the drop. So even this has broken local supply and then come back down. It's making new supply, but this is something that's worth keeping an eye on because, you know, it's in 2 weekly demand. It hasn't got significant supply above other than this daily, so you'd have to watch out just immediately, or just keep an eye on this, you know, wait for it to break that daily and flip it and then trade in here once you see the possibility. Once you see that happen, then trade something back in here. But at least this doesn't have the 4 or 5 day supply that everything else does. So that's one thing in its favor. Let's see what ZLC is doing. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, so that was a short entry. Oh, God knows what something like this is going to do. When they do this crazy stuff, I don't know what that was, whether that was a... is that a real pump? Okay, it was an hourly candle, so I don't know. I guess there's some sort of news behind that or just some fat-fingered person, so... need to see a little bit more follow-up on that to see if it's going to last. ZEUS, I think he alerts a little bit early on that. Yeah, see something like this again, this is not necessarily a high probability trade. You know, it's possible that it's a double bottom. It's bounced off that, it's retesting now. Hasn't got through local supply particularly. Well, it hasn't got through, it's got through the immediate daily supply, but it hasn't gone through, you know, obviously hasn't made, hasn't broken a significant swing high to make it an uptrend. It's the first demand, so this is what you call a risk entry before, you know, so I'll give an example over here. So when you've got one move and the retracement, this is a risk entry. Then when you've got the second one, then this is what you call a confirmation entry. And frankly, I don't think they're very useful because this is I've seen enough of these ones fail with this wave coming back down to take out that low before it goes up, because you can get that kind of fuckery. But this, for the first entry, is what you call a risk entry because you're still in a downtrend. It's retraced and it could still just continue the downtrend. So it's the same that I just call it a risk entry, and that it hasn't really confirmed that it's in any sort of uptrend yet. So that, you know, the trend is still waves down, retrace, sideways, sideways, down, retrace, down. Doesn't mean it's not going to give you a scalp, you know, even if it just goes up into here, but not necessarily a good entry. Baby Doge. Some old zones reappearing. Interesting. So swing failed at the high there. Yeah, I've been biased too long on this because this did actually have a 6-month demand, but it looks like this might flip to a 6-month supply. So again, that's just something to be very careful of. It's also only yearly demand, but if it closes under here, then that's a 6-month supply. So again, I'd be more inclined to be looking for shorts at that point, still within a range, but then, you know, obviously it's got scope to go down quite far if it really wants to. So the 6-month is going to be critical, but this really needs to get a bounce now, or it's yeah, probably a little bit doomed. You know, and I guess we still do have 2 weeks to go. So I guess, you know, even if these immediate zones, you know, with the higher lows that I'm talking about, this is not dissimilar to some of the majors charts in some ways. Even if this doesn't hold and we drift down into here, it is still possible, you know, that then the next zones can get the big bounce before the 6-month confirm. We do still have 12 days to go. So, but I think we'd need to see possibly on FOMC tonight or some sort of news-based drop it quickly to get that V-shaped recovery and then recover in time. So I've got an alert there for a short on 3-5 day supply if it gets back up there, but it's obviously made some stuff in the middle. So it's a 5-day in there. 5-day and 4-day supply in there. 4 days a bit cleaner than the 5-day. Even the 5-day worked. Probably have them both in there, but yeah, so still coming off major supply. It's now the third hit on this demand, so it's a risky entry. Had a decent move off the last, could just make a higher low here, so maybe you can keep an eye on that. The higher time frame is still decent on this. You know, I don't want to discount the fact that this is an annual demand and a 6-month demand, and then in a 2-month inside. So you know, if the market's ready, you know, Baby Doggy like doesn't look dissimilar to Doggy, does it? Maybe Elon will suddenly announce he's buying this. I wonder if I overlaid the Doggy chart on this, you know, if Doggy looked like this very much before it went off to the moon. So you never know with this. I'm not even sure actually. I don't know if it follows Doggy at all. Not really sure. Again, that's something I can potentially look at. Yeah, there's a good example of, you know, what I was just saying on LPT. Interesting. Just got a message saying from my chat app saying I do not currently have an active public live stream, but my yeah, my other screens still seem to appear to be having live stream. So okay, we seem to have reconnected. So hopefully I didn't lose the stream there. But anyway. So AOGO is another good example. So this one I think was a Binance delisting pump, which then it dumped it a little bit and then went crazy. And then I think everybody relisted it. Actually, I think no, it didn't get delisted by anybody else, but I think Binance has subsequently relisted it. Let me see. So I have no idea what that's all about. If it's just pure fuckery, if that's the case, isn't it? Yeah. So oh look, it relisted here. So it delisted at that point. It dumped a little bit, then it pumped, and then they relisted it. Maybe at the top by the looks of it. Or I don't know, I'm not sure if they relisted up here or if they relisted down here, but obviously it's relisted and now it's just dropped ever since, which is just so ridiculous in these markets sometimes. But yeah, so again, like an entry like this, yeah, it might get a bounce. It's on the 2-week demand, but be conscious. I think I also said there's this 8-hour inside it. Be conscious of the background of it, so it doesn't necessarily, you know, it's probably much less likely to bounce here because this isn't really demand, it's just people messing around. Jaeger I wanted to be bullish on up here. With hindsight, it looks like stupid, but then at the time, I think I thought it looked, and I think it had a weekly demand. To be fair, in my defence, no, it didn't have a weekly demand. It had some sort of demand in there. No, it had a daily, and that was it. There was a daily lower one. I don't know. I think it was holding long enough for me to think actually, you know, maybe this is looking okay. Or while it was holding that, maybe when it's like that, it can look decent. But then when you look at it hindsight, you're like, why was I looking too long that? But this is also hi Denzel. This is also my concern of like you know, lower high. And it's hard, you know, like these long entries are the kind of the harder ones because you don't know if you're going to get a triangle and then this move up, or if you've got an ABC, you know, it's what I always say, is an ABC. And I think in this case, because we were holding this weekly level, so this is on the MACD chart, so just be aware you know, with the history, I'm not sure which one I used. I think I used yeah, I used one of these ones, but I can't for the life of me remember which one, and I'm not in the right place to be. Let's just look at that one just to see. No, I think, but so showing similar. So I think at the time, yeah, I could see there was a weekly demand on this, so I think it was worth. I thought it was worth looking for longs, but now obviously it's come back down into it and flipped into a weekly supply. So um, that was hence the short entry today. So now, you know, these are still very early days. They could still very much go either way. And obviously here, I think I obviously would have made the disclaimer there were some trend line stops there that I thought could get taken out, so obviously that's come down. But yeah, these are very early days. Obviously, it's got very little price action, so whether this weekly is even going to be a decent drop, I don't know. We'll see. We've had a little drop off it to start with. Gorilla is something again I was more bullish on. It's actually now I look at it, it looks quite similar to Jaeger, doesn't it? But this is something actually did get the move up, and if you compare that to Jaeger, at this point in time, this then rolled off a cliff, whereas at the second wave, whereas this got another move. But then to be fair, this had made a higher high, whereas Jaeger was on a lower high. And then similarly now we've got this sort of swing fail of the high here. This is again showing itself to be weak demand. So I think I had an alert here, there's a 5-day demand in there. So that was the more aggressive one, and I believe I made the comment in it that there was a daily inside lower, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, this is not looking very pretty at the moment. So then I've got another alert down here, 12-hour 1-day demand, but then it also appears to have a monthly. So yeah, I think I've drawn again. It's an early monthly that I've drawn. This might end up as a monthly demand if it can hold long enough. It's already actually, no, it's already a 3-week or 2-week. It's from when the exchange opened though. So it's not necessarily the most reliable. So these zones aren't the most reliable. So I would generally use them in conjunction with something else. So we do have a 12-hour 1-day demand down here. Just bring that zone to the front so we can see it. So yeah, there's an alert just a little bit higher here, just for the possibility of getting about some 12-hour or 1-day demand down here. Probably put that a little bit lower. But this one obviously is not looking overly promising at the moment. POPCAT's another slightly more aggressive alert, so similar to the structures and everything else. It's got a 5-day demand sitting on top of a weekly. It's got a lot of 5-day supply in there. I had a 5-day supply short up here, which didn't quite get tapped. And it's also got a 4-day that it's rejecting off there. So again, just need to see if this is going to pick up support. So it's interesting. I look back here and I see how some of the structures, even though potentially weren't looking very nice, and then it can just really pick up if it wants to. But again, this is coming off 2 month supply, so again, I'm finding it hard. This is rejection of 2 month supply up there, nothing on the 3 month. So, and again, if the 2 month gets a close below 27,278 or broadly around there, then we're going to make a new 2 month supply, and then we could see really big drops. But yeah, so for now, just trade those local zones, but be very, very careful that, if we get that, put that 2 month level in. So it's very, very close to potentially. So there's still 12 days to go. We've still got a while, but if it closes below this level, if it takes its time, maybe we get a bounce now, comes back up in here, and maybe it goes up into the 5-day, comes back down. If it takes 12 days to get down there, then you might go, yeah, we're on weekly demand if I reset that alert, which I probably would for down here. See? Yeah, actually, I don't know, to be fair, I probably wouldn't set an alert there, but if you wait for the weekly level, wait there, and if it takes 12 days to get there, then by that time, then you're going to have a 2 month supply on this. So you just need to be careful what kind of bounces are coming in at this point. I'll delete all that. And yeah, Choose your trades wisely. CSPR, another one just coming off 3 months, 2 months supply, may or may not make a higher low. SERAPH I quite liked. This one, I've liked this before, so I liked this back here. But again, just taking its sweet time. But we do very much have this nice sideways consolidation, which looks like it's building up a little bit. So I had an alert here for daily demand. It's obviously not quite tap that level, so I'm actually going to reset that. But it might not come back now. But yeah, I do think this is worth an eye on. It's messy and I don't love it. I had to switch from using one of the other charts. You know, it's still in weekly or 3 weekly supply there. But it's coming off, so it also has a monthly demand. So what this has on the bigger picture is we've got a change in monthly. So this is a monthly demand. It's come down inside it. It might create a new monthly demand here. Does have a 3 weekly supply, but not a very good one. It's obviously going quite a lot higher inside it now. Possibility of 2-day demand. So yeah, I want to see this a little bit more for a couple of days. But if you want to keep an eye on this on the low time frames, I think it's worth doing. Let's reset that alert for the daily if it, since it's just missed my level, just in case it revisits, particularly if we get some CME fuckery tonight. It did get brought back up quite quickly though, so yeah, be on the ball on this if it does come back down and give you a retest down here. Other than that, just wait for 8 or 12 hour demands in between if you get them. And the risk on this is obviously we're still in this sideways range. It hasn't broken out of the range. If it breaks out of the range, obviously it becomes a much more viable trade. Could still break either way, but obviously now it's starting to build a bit more demand. We have the bigger monthly, we've got the weekly that it's held, but it still really does need to break out. But that's definitely worth having on the radar. SERAPH. Again, I only just kind of got this on my radar more recently, so getting a couple of long entries. I've had more aggressive longs. This, again, is a little bit ropey. Actually, in fact, while instead of looking at SERAPH here, I'm just thinking if there's anything else I want to look at while I'm here. I don't think there's anything else massively interesting. Just my usual alerts, trade up and down, trade up and down. That's what I was saying earlier. I think I digressed. But yeah, somebody was asking me yesterday, like, what should you do? What, should we buy alts at the moment, etc. I'm just like trade up and down. I've been saying that for about 2 years when everybody else has been saying all season. Sorry, correct that. Not everybody, most people, a lot of people. I don't like to be that person who goes, I'm the only one that said this. I'm the only one that called the top because it's bullshit. I like it when I'm right. I do like to boast when I'm right a little bit. I like to also analyze when I'm wrong. But I don't like to kind of have that level of narcissism, arrogance that I'm the only one that you should watch and the only one that can tell you where the price is going to reject or where it's going to hold. Because that's just utter crap. What I can tell you is I give you decent zones for alerts, and unless we're having some epic market crash, and normally you're going to get some sort of a reaction like here. Okay, it didn't break demand, but gives you a decent reaction here. Didn't break supply, but gives you a decent reaction. And obviously I disclaim them, some are more or less aggressive. So anyway, CHEEMS is in a giant triangle, so I quite like this chart, but again, how long it's going to take to break out of this giant triangle is anyone's guess. And I've seen also, I think, stonks I was watching in a giant triangle and then eventually just died. Anyway, yeah, so I was going to my other layout. So just because I talked about this in the last stream, I had this layout that I just made for myself just because I wanted to keep track of all the things. There was a particular week where I had a whole bunch of things pumping, but not much. So that's why specific things. So hype, form was already up and was already potentially starting to roll over. SERAPH, ZBCN had a big, I think that was a listing pump as well. White have pumped for no apparent reason. FLUX also for no apparent reason. I say for no apparent reason because these all pumped when everything else I think was dropping. It's just a particular period whenever this was, like the start of May. SIREN actually wasn't the start of May because SIREN was up there earlier, so it was a little bit later. Anyway, I can't recall, but I just added them to this layout because I wanted to see, like, do we genuinely have a strong market, or are we just having randomly things pump and then die forever? And that's what I was going to show you on the other one, actually. I can actually get this list to sort. I have to click it 15 times, eventually it sorts, but it normally takes a while doing so. Here we go. Because I was going to show you ALPACA. So, this was listing, delisting pumps, so it got delisted and then just went crazy, and so it's like an exit pump. So this was like 6 month supply and then a yearly supply, and it's obviously gone almost all the way to the top of there. Then it had flipped a 2 month demand here. I'll show you here. So this green candle did close above there to create a 2 month demand. I don't think it had anything else. Yeah, it is, it was up in an annual supply, so obviously it has that against it, but it was worth watching for the possibility of longs off the top of that 2 month demand. However, obviously you can see that the first one gave a decent bounce there to there, so that was, was a decent entry. The second one gave just 1 day of up, and then it just slowly drifted death off the cliff. And I did have some higher short entries and nothing ever got hit on that, I don't think. And now it's back down, obviously it whipped right down below all-time low. So there was that. There was AOGO that I showed you earlier as well, that this is a slowly drift of death. There's something else which pumped earlier that I was just monitoring. One of the O coins. Not on, but let's look at on while we're here. So, okay, so I'll come back to on in a sec. Hold on a sec. Was it OG? Yeah, so OG again, one of these massive pumps up into here, and then gave a nice long entry off there, but again, just hasn't got very far, didn't get up to that supply, and is now kind of dropping back through. In fact, I don't think it was OG either that I was thinking of. ORCA. ORCA is the one. So again, yeah, ORCA. This is like a lower time frame pump. And I had so many shorts on this, desperately trying to short it, and then I stopped looking at it, obviously, by this stage. But, it took so long to get back down to this demand. But, so far I'm not really seeing these pumps maintain, like they do kind of tend to die. So this, to be fair on this, well, not to be fair, but just in comparison, part of the reason that I was looking at all this other layout and these big pumps is because I wondered if they were going to hold or if they were going to do cliff dive like and layer and now form as well. So, that they're just grinding their way up. And unfortunately, so I actually was watching this at the last minute, but really annoyingly, I think I had an alert set for this 2-day supply up here or somewhere up the top, and it just didn't make it, or maybe even the 12-hour right at the top there. Because the 12-hour, the 2-day did get tested there. I don't know, I had some alerting up here, and then unfortunately this happened before I managed to. So, like I say, this is not the fairest comparison with the other charts because this did have some sort of incident, hacking, dev selling something. But then you've got layer. This is another one. I was very actively. I use this as quite an example of looking for entries in lower time frames, which is why I've got quite a lot of short entries. So I was looking. There was a phase where most coins new listings were coming up, either making lower highs and just dying, or swing fading the high and then dying, getting significant drops. So that's why I was quite aggressively looking for shorts there until eventually it broke out. But again, it ground up for ages and then just got thrown off a cliff. And, this went through, I think it was a daily demand, and it was like, well, okay, maybe it's going to retest and hold the breakout. Then there was a weekly demand, and then obviously now you can see it's now looking like, it didn't hold the weekly here, and now looks like it's going to break the low. Very close to doing that. So what I was then thinking with all the other ones is whether it was worth watching. So SIREN being one of the early ones, so SIREN's had this pump a long time ago, but I was like, when is this thing going to come down? And also quite a lot of watching, we see these extended consolidations and then they do eventually just fall off a cliff. SIREN's a nice example of actually what I just said a moment ago. So when we had these new listings, this was this short entry here, you have these new listings and they come up and they just take out the previous highs and then drop. So SIREN was a really great great early trade. And then obviously it made this sort of sparkling comeback, so similar to layer. So I started watching this. I had this kind of aggressive. I said, I wasn't sure at this point, but I had made a weekly supply. It did go almost to the top of that weekly, but did hold it. And then I haven't had any other entries on this. I think I had that one for a while, but it didn't retest. But I've been talking about it a lot in the group. And again, if this is going to get a massive drop, obviously there's a monthly level there that I got alerted, but is it just going to do what some of these others are doing and just run through everything? So SIREN was sort of on my hit list, but maybe it's just going to die. Form, we did just have that death, so again, this has just been running up. Like I know, I just looked at this. I was again trading this quite heavily when it was first listed, but then stopped looking at it for a while and then looked back and I was like, oh wow, it's done this. So this isn't as big a breakout as some of the other ones, but then again, I was looking for the rollover, getting some long entries, a short entry up here, and just looking for that rollover. And then yesterday, just threw this giant wick. I thought I actually have probably deleted this on my other layout. Problem with having two layouts is you then get them overlap. But yeah, I had this giant wick down, back it down into monthly demand, and it's gone deeper. So now I've reset the alert. So I should really again have the two show it was set originally, and then I've reset the alert. If it comes back down and tests this zone. Obviously we've got the trend line stops below here, so I'm not sure if it's going to hold that, but again, worth watching for a retest there. But that's kind of what I was looking for on SIREN and all of these. Like, are they just going to give, because maybe shorts are just the better way to go. Raven was, another one that was an upbit listing pump. I tried for the aggressive short entry, but then it went back higher and it's taken its sweet time falling down. So then I did manage to get a short entry for that 12-hour supply there, and I've added a new one today. There's a 1 and 2 day supply in here. So keep an eye on that for the retest. And again, still in 3 month supply. This one, I think I've got the monthly drawn in. I think it might create a monthly demand down here. I'm not sure if that's confirmed yet. No. So it could create a monthly at that level. It already has a weekly there anyway. But again, is it gonna, play out the 3 month, 6 month supply up here, maybe 6 month supply that it's coming to there for just a bigger drop, or is it going to hold for a higher low? Situation uncertain. So again on Raven, like I don't necessarily expect a massive drop. This might just have a slow grind like ORCA did, for example. So again, potentially look at that for a long entry if it comes into that daily level. And then I think on this, just need to watch out for where the 6 months going to be, and then it might create a new 6 month supply up there. And I think again, I've already got the 3 month. I know that it already does have a 3 month supply, but might create a new 6 months. So I guess just need to sit and see what the close is on this. But again, something worth watching for shorts. And FLUX I'm going to take off here now and replace it with TIBBIR. So FLUX wasn't like a massive green breakout like so many others. So this was a bit different, but I just wanted to watch that short playing out and again, see if it just comes back down into this demand down here. I did put an alert for 4 day supply, but this one might, this actually I feel like could run. One of the nicest structures across the whole market at the moment. So yeah, just keep an eye on that if it goes back up there. And keep an eye on it if it comes a little bit lower or if it drops down into this area. The only risk here is that this trend line stops there. I'm going to take this. Oh, what did I just do? Way too easy to drag these alerts now. They used to give you an error message, but they don't do that anymore. But I'm going to replace this on this layout now with TIBBIR, because TIBBIR, along with SIREN, was another one. I was like, when is this thing going to fall off a cliff? I feel like I just want to watch out for things falling off cliffs now. So this this is just an accident waiting to happen. I was liking this at the start. I did get some really good long entries down the bottom, but I didn't anticipate this just to keep going in this slow grind. I don't think anybody's still in this. I did actually, again, I'm on the wrong layout now for this. I did actually have a long entry in there that went off today. So it's got a little bounce off there, but obviously it's just at some point, I think this is going to die. Like in a perfect world, I would like to see this blow off top first. Whether it will, I don't know. But you can watch this for like sort of breaks for trends and things like that. But yeah, I wanted to add this into the layout, so I'm just keeping this separate layout so I could just watch for these things, if they make new supply or demand, just keep a closer monitor on them rather than having to constantly remember which coins I'm looking at. And white was another one. So this is another, along with ZBCN, these had, sort of random big pumps that day. Again, it's really nice to trade both directions. So just want to disclaimer this looks like I'm longing the top. I did look for a potential short on this swing fail there when it first hit. So what I do when I win, again, just to reiterate for people who don't follow me, like if there is a possibility of a swing failure, I set an alert saying like all-time high or all-time low. So in this case, you got the rejection, but it didn't break demand, so there was nothing really to short after this. But what you're looking for is either short or long, so you can also look for a long on the breakout. So in this case, this had made a 4-hour demand, so then when it closes above, and then like look for a long, and it did actually get a very long entry off there, but then had to blow off top. And then here you're starting to look for, is it going to give you retests for follow-up short entries once that's apparently going to be a swing failure. So got a long entry there, a short entry there, and then I start to become more short bias. Short entry here, didn't get back up to that one, and then a new one there until it gets back down into demand. Could find support here. This would be a TP if you were in a short entry on this, but and then again, new monthly demand below. So this is certainly something that you should watch if it comes back down into that area. So that's white. ZBCN, I think, was the same. Like I said, I think this was a listing pump, but I'm not 100% sure. Again, new 2-month. It's got a 2-month demand down there. I think, did it actually test that? No. So it will make a new 2-month. Hasn't made that yet. Again, that's just me drawing it in early. But again, I was just watching this for the possibility of just what it's going to do. So here's another example of, the breakout retest. So my alert went on this here for all-time high. Obviously, it just broke out, and I missed that retest there. Or if I did have an alert there, it missed the 4-hour. Then get the retest on the 12-hour demand here for that move. Then here, trying to get a retest for another long entry if it's going to continue. But obviously now it's consolidating and thinking about it. Then yesterday I saw it had made this trend line stop, so I set an alert. I talked about it in the channel. It had flipped a daily demand here and made trend line stop. So I was like, okay, this might run higher. So I know at least one of the group got that move up. Unfortunately, didn't get up to my short entry. And then now we're looking at this trend line retest. Given we have trend line stops below, this was a risky entry. It's now come deeper into the zone. It might even have broken down that zone there. I'm not sure. But yeah, I was just watching this for potentially if it's going to get another move up. But then also, has it made a 3-day? Oh, it had already made a 3-day supply. Sorry, it's gone through the 3-day. Yeah, what I did disclaimer this trend line with is that, while it might break the trend line, it still does have supply immediately above. So yeah, I just need to see a little bit more on this one, but hopefully get a bit more time and maybe become a little bit more like white, for example, to give some better short entries on that. But I feel like ZBCN is probably going to come down. But I want to see some decent supply to short on it on. And then finally on this layout, we've got SERAPH and Hype. So both two Hype coins. Did SERAPH I already talked about? Maybe I just stopped. I stopped at that point, I think, because I was going to go look at this overall. So do we have a new weekly demand on this now? So new weekly demand there. It's got a new 3-day at current price, but it's not a good 3-day. So this is the potential of a 3-day that could get run through. So again, I've had a more aggressive alert on this for, let's see what this alert says, for a long at current price. 1 week. Or is it just below, or is it at the price? No, it's just 1 week demand now. So at the time it was an aggressive 12-hour demand, but it didn't come back and test it for me. But now it's just a weekly demand at current price there. And it could drop down a little bit deeper inside. But so I had an alert for, I think, the daily demand or 2-day demand at current price. Just as aggressive an entry, which obviously got I think the alert went here, it got a little bounce off it, but not very much. Now has now made some new supply. But again, you know, this is the very aggressive entry. That would be, you know, preferred entry if it comes a little bit deeper, or if Bitcoin drags it off a cliff at some point. Buy the dip. Yes, you can buy the dip. But it's so easy to say, where exactly is the dip? What if this is a dip? This could be a dip. But then, you know, maybe it'll do this, and then that suddenly doesn't look like so much of a dip anymore. Anyway, risk management, the most important thing. So anyway, yeah, we got some longs in there and a short in there, but then it continued higher. Now, again, getting some aggressive longs up here, but I do feel like maybe it's going to roll over. It may be a little bit aggressive, but we'll see. You know, we could still get something like this and another push up. Hype is basically the same, but hype now has rolled over. Come on, computer. Well, if this is the first freeze my computer gets for this entire stream, then I'll be happy because I'm just about to finish. So, at the moment we're frozen. And are we back? No, we're wearing blue. Wearing blue, what do you call that? Rotation of death, circle of death. What I was going to say on hype anyway, is that, well, I can show you the chart at the moment, it's here on the top left anyway. Again, it was like syrup, it was nice, it was trading in both directions. Then I had a couple of more aggressive shorts on it. I don't know why this is frozen, like even my CPU. Actually, my memory looks like it's completely frozen. Anyway, I think I've now set another short entry, but so I had a couple of aggressive shorts up here, but it did eventually come and take out the high. Again, doesn't bode well when it says Windows is not responding. I don't like that. Anyway, I think I'm just going to finish up the stream now if my computer's going to be dying, and maybe it's already died and I'm just not aware of it as yet. Anyway, so thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're interested. Please feel free to join my Telegram and ask me any questions you want to there, or put in any requests for any alts you want charted. Gone through quite a lot today. The first half of the stream is all about the market as a whole, so that's pretty good, and done 45 minutes on alts thereafter. Oh, and we're back finally. Hopefully that hasn't damaged the stream. Anyway, yeah. Don't know whether I can bother going on about the hype now. So yeah, hype again was, I was just trying to short for that possible swing fail of the all-time high there, but then it came above, and I tried to go for the long, come back below, so that was probably a little bit aggressive, and the timing wasn't great on that with Bitcoin dropping. Another short was pretty nice there, but just picked up demand for another move up. So now I'm going to try again and we've frozen again for a more aggressive short entry. Again, up here, having not broken demand, and then the possibility of a long down here if we come back there. And anyway, I'm going to bow out now before my computer dies completely. So please, like I say, like and subscribe, support me if you can. Feel free to join Telegram and ask any questions you want. And yeah, have a good evening.